We left on Friday with an expectation that President Cyril Ramaphosa would be making a cabinet announcement on Sunday. No statement of that announcement was issued anyway over the course on Sunday. What was announced, though, was the Gauteng Premier, Panyaza Lesufi. He announced that he would be announcing his cabinet. Remember, there's also a coalition government in the Gauteng province. But 30 minutes after that statement came out, there was another statement that said that announcement is postponed. And there seems to be an issue with the ANC and the DA failing to reach an agreement, not only on the composition of the Gauteng provincial government, but also the composition of the president's cabinet. Remember, the constitutional prerogative is the president's. He can decide who he wants or does not want in his cabinet, but because of the statement of intent with this government of national unity, there has to be some form of consultation and maybe even compromise on how that cabinet is composed. Weekend reports saying that the Democratic Alliance want up to 9 cabinet positions, including the position of deputy president for John Steenhuisen. But also over the weekend, we've had smaller parties now also joining the GNU. We have members of the so-called Progressive Caucus, the UDM, the PAC, and Al-Jama now joining the GNU, as well as RISE Mzansi with their 2 seats. Good morning, Songezo Zibi, who is leader of RISE Mzansi. The decision to join the GNU, to be an active participant, how did you come to this conclusion to join? Good morning.
Lester, good morning, and thanks very much for having me on. So during the campaign, there was a promise we made repeatedly, and that was that we are campaigning and building this organization so that we can be in the same rooms where these critical matters that matter to voters, which often are not paid attention to, are considered, one. And secondly, that we are able to do the work in Parliament with other political parties in order to hold the executive to account. So the reason we took a bit long to make this decision and kind of discussed with various political parties, not just the ANC, over the last 2 weeks effectively, was to see what option serves that promise best. Is it ourselves as a 2-seat caucus in the National Assembly and 1 seat in Gauteng, acting on our own? Or do we look for like-minded parties that we are going to work in concert with? That could have happened outside the GNU or inside the GNU. As it has happened, and you mentioned in our intro, some of the political parties that are social democratic in their outlook, like the UDM, like Good, and so on, are now in the GNU. And when you are just 2 people, and we have to cover all of Parliament by yourself or with just one other small political party, it's nearly impossible to do so and you disappear. So for those practical reasons, and because nobody won the election, we have to work together. We joined the GNU.
Does being in the room where things happen, does it mean you deserve a seat at the table when it comes to actual governance in the executive?
Well, one of the things, again, Lester, we were always clear about, and I was at pains to emphasize this, is that governing is not just being in the executive. And I use these words exactly. I said the quality of legislation matters. The quality of the work that parliamentary committees do, which is 70-80% of the time, matters. The quality of the oversight matters. The connection of people, ordinary people, to Parliament matters. That is our constitutional architecture. So by being in Parliament already, we are already in government in one way or another. The question is, how effective do we become in that role? So we didn't go into this in exchange for an executive seat. We didn't ask for one, and we were not offered one.
I get the hint of humility from yourself in that you are in the room where it happens. You are at the seat of government. You have a role to play. But let's talk about some of your other partners, because now you're not just a partner of the ANC, you're a partner of the DA, the IFP, the PA, the Freedom Front Plus, all those parties. Currently, what is the state of the conversation, the concessions that are being made, the considerations? Also noting that the decision on how a cabinet is composed is completely, constitutionally, the president's prerogative. But there has to be a level of concession. And I want to know from you, you're a two-seat party. You're not expecting any form of cabinet position, but do you think a party like the Democratic Alliance with 21%, do you think the demands of 9 seats, 9 cabinet positions and that of deputy president is warranted?
Stephen, ultimately I'm sorry I said Stephen, Lester, that's a discussion between the Democratic Alliance and the president, I think, because it is his prerogative. One of the reasons we didn't talk about an executive seat is because constitutionally that is a prerogative of the president. But we are not naive. We do understand that given the size of the DA, they would have that kind of conversation with the ANC in particular. What I would like to caution against is driving the country into an unassailable deadlock simply because any of the political parties, the major political parties, are not able to see beyond their delusions of grandeur and lead us into a deadlock where for 2-3 weeks there is no cabinet. One of the things we always emphasized, even ahead of the Constitution of Parliament, is continuity and stability. The cost of national debt last week dropped significantly because we're the government of national unity, we're the president, speaker, and deputy speaker. We cannot lose that momentum this week. There has to be a cabinet. We have to have portfolio committees, and the whole of government has to start functioning as it should.
So, guys, the ANC has now brought in sufficient parties to the GNU to secure 200 seats in the National Assembly, even if it excludes the DA. So all the parties, 9 parties, make up 200 seats exactly. I know that the election campaign was robust, at times quite brutal, but do you see a GNU that can operate even without the Democratic Alliance, or would you hope that concessions are made, compromises are made, that at least then the Democratic Alliance falls apart or still continues to be in government? Your thoughts?
Lester, when nobody wins an election, I think we must make best endeavors to make sure that we are as inclusive as possible in this instance, and therefore I would urge the Democratic Alliance and the ANC to try and find each other as quickly as possible so that you have sufficient consensus even in Parliament to move ahead. And things like money bills, and this is one of the things I emphasized just over a week ago, Lester, is that there are things like money bills which transfer revenue from the Treasury into various government departments so that public servants can get paid and the lights can stay on and that kind of thing. When you have too thin a majority in Parliament, they may be held up. We do not want that. And that is one of the reasons we decided to get involved, so that even if it's 2 votes, it matters in making sure that people are not inconvenienced.
So you're suggesting that if the Democratic Alliance does not participate, we could be in a US-style White House versus congressional deadlock where we can't get the most basic of money bills passed to simply just allow government to operate. That is the risk that we face.
That is the risk that we face, Lester, and therefore I would urge the 2 parties to find each other.
Songezo Zibi, really appreciate your time. You can call me Steve anytime, Songezo. Really appreciate it.